Hi everyone, thanks for joining our first webinar of the series dedicated to providing L'Oreal tips and tricks on how to get the most out of your UGC. With me, I've got Alison and Sam, strategic account managers here at Olympic, who'll be taking you through the benefits of UGC. But before we do start, I just wanted to mention that we have created a landing page that will host the recording of all the sessions, so you'll be able to go back to it in your own time. Secondly, if you do have any questions during the session, we do have a Q&A towards the end of it. So please drop your questions into the box, which you should see at the bottom of the Zoom system, and we'll do our best to answer it. And lastly, we will be sending you a survey at the end to get your feedback and understand how we can better tailor the sessions to you. It will only take a couple of minutes, so please do respond to that. And now I'll pass you over to the hands of Sam and Alison.
Hi everyone, this is Sam. So welcome to the first L'Oreal webinar. Today's focus will be how L'Oreal brands can maximise the potential of UGC. So from this session, we're hoping that you gain more of a general knowledge on user-generated content and the benefits of using it. And we also want to help with how this can be used in your own brand strategy and hopefully inspire you on how to do this effectively. So today's agenda is to cover some information on why UGC is important, and we've actually got some industry stats to share with you guys as well. And secondly, we'll take you through some case studies, and this is to inspire you on your own usage of UGC and see how other brands, some L'Oreal brands and some external brands have done this effectively. So I'm going to pass over to Alison now for the next section.
Thanks, Sam. So hi, everyone. I'll be starting with looking at the customer journey and the marketing space evolution. So as we know, there is a majority of marketers who use some sort of consumer journey mapping to understand their purchase behavior. To be successful and to make a positive impact, marketers need to support the consumer across all stages of this journey. However, mapping this journey across a linear line is not representative of the actual behavior like it used to be. In fact, as referenced on this slide, research shows that 70% of consumers are now leading their own shopping journey, while only 30% get their initial inspiration from a retailer or a brand's advertisement, for example. So as you know, the landscape has changed. And that's the reason why that the consumer journey has changed as well. Consumers want to be in charge of their own brand experience, and they are now taking the lead in discovering products through a multitude of different channels. The variety of different combinations of channel, time, place, person, and point within this buying journey creates hundreds of different touch points. And therefore, it creates also a lot of opportunities for a brand to engage consumers. However, you know, those multiple and repeat touch points can sometimes be hard to consistently create engaging visuals and content that will then maximize the impact of this connection every time. And I'm sure you'll also agree that the content can be expensive to produce, complicated to distribute, and can grow old and repetitive very, very quickly.
So as Alison just mentioned, there's lots of different touch points along the customer journey. And with so many different channels that customers are using, brands are in a position where they constantly need to have this library of diverse and impactful content to share, which is the challenge here. And you can see from this slide, and we'll share this with you afterwards so you can show this to your teams and your colleagues. But you can see from here that, for example, almost 50% of consumers who use social media during the shopping process are 4 times more likely to spend more on purchases. And this is then why we have the Olympic content engine to help with these content needs. So the Olympic content engine allows you guys to collect content from Instagram, Twitter, and direct uploads. Once that content has been collected, we use a combination of human moderation. For those of you who are already doing this, you know that there is a moderation team and you give them brand guidelines to make sure your content is exactly how you need it. And there's also machine learning algorithms as well that help surface the best content that you want to use. So this then gives you a library of the diverse content that I mentioned before. So you're able to activate this content online, so on your website, but also in other marketing channels. So think about emails, think about also offline, so things like print and in-store activations and social as well. So you can also measure the performance and learn important insights using the analytics within the platform. So these are analytics on revenue and also engagement. And you also can identify brand ambassadors within the platform and use this insight that you can see on them and the content they're sharing to create perhaps relationships with these ambassadors that you don't have already. And your Olympic account managers can actually help you understand where to find all of this in the content engine and how to see these metrics and how to use them.
Thanks, Sam. So now hopefully you have a good idea of why UGC is important, and you're armed with some stats to back this up as well. As mentioned earlier, we will share this slide with you so you can it will help enforce with your teams. So next we're going to go through some case studies to give you some ideas on how to utilize your user-generated content and hopefully to inspire you. First, we're going to start with NYX Cosmetic as an example. So here the challenge that NYX wanted to solve was that buying makeup online can be very challenging for consumers. And this is because, well, for a number of reasons, but mainly because consumers are looking for a realistic and accurate idea of how those different shades will look on them. And looking at a variety of different makeup shades and skin tones can be quite difficult to relate to when buying online and without trying it on your own skin. So the approach here was that by using the Olympic content engine, NYX were able to tag the UGC images down to the specific shade level. And this content then was used on site, so on their website, but also on in-store on digital screens. The results that NYX experienced were that, first of all, they improved the consumer journey, and also they created a true omni-channel experience. So in the Olympic content engine, NYX could measure that the revenue impact of each piece of user-generated content, and also they identified some crucial brand ambassadors that have shown ongoing loyalty and brand affinity. So let's look at those. They saw that the average order value was 90% or higher than 90% for consumers that have interacted with UGC in comparisons of, with users that didn't interact with it. And also they noticed that consumers interacted with an average of 7 UGC images per visit. So this shows that the work that NYX did by choosing to tag images down to the shade level really helped the consumers to find the products that they wanted and also to personalize their experience online, but also in store as well.
Great, thank you. And next we're going to have a look at SE Canada. So the challenge here was that SE wanted to bring followers from their social back to their site, and they also wanted to use UGC to promote their seasonal colors, and also they were going to look at using UGC versus brand assets as well. So the approach that SE took was to simply just use the content engine, collect all of the images that their customers had been sharing on social, and use moderation to make sure that these images were the best quality. So during this time, they would have given our moderation team specific guidelines to follow for this content, and made sure that the collectors set up in the content engine were going to bring in the right sort of content. And the results that they saw was the engagement rate with UGC on Facebook was 40% higher than with just brand assets. They also discovered 30% of their fans through the ambassadors tab in the Olympic platform, which shows the customers that have created the best images that consumers are actually interacting with. And 60% of SE's top Instagram photos were regrams of this UGC, so they fulfilled all of their objectives for this project.
Amazing. So moving on to the case study of Simple Skincare. So Simple Skincare is actually a British brand of soap and skincare products and designed for sensitive skins. The challenge here was that Simple Skincare wanted to increase brand awareness, but also increase the amount of quality UGC. Because when they first started, the partnership UGC collected was quite low for Simple Skincare. The approach was that by using the Olympic content engine, Simple used or organized a contest encouraging customers to try the new product, which was called the new micellar cleansing water. So the contest was called Test the Water, or hashtag Test the Water, and it encouraged customers to share their experiences testing the new product. So share content related to that particular product. The results from this were actually amazing. Simple increased the amount of content, of UGC content, by 10 times. About 2,400 images were collected, and over 600 were actually used by the brand and published online on the widgets. So these assets increased also CTR by almost 6 times and convinced consumers to purchase. Simple Skincare saw that on average, customers browsed around 5 images per session. This really shows that contests can be a really great way of not only engaging your community, but also increasing the amount of usable user-generated content for the brand, and of course also increase performances and conversion online.
Cool. So the last case study that I want to go through with you is from Kate Somerville. So these guys are an LA-based skin health expert brand, and they have an emphasis on clinical skincare. And their challenge was that they wanted to increase the amount of images being shared by their community and to use these on site along with their own brand content as well. And they had a goal of increasing the conversion by improving their customer shopping experience. So the approach that Kate Somerville took was to use the Olympic content engine and moderation services to collect quality on-brand content and use this UGC that they've collected on site in galleries and on product pages. And the result for this was Kate Somerville found that customers were 2 times more likely to convert after interacting with UGC. And these customers that did interact with UGC showed a 7% increase in their average order value. So this actually follows basically one of our best practices. It's not too much extra resource for you guys. So just think about setting up the right collectors, having the best brand guidelines, and then you can end up with a really good library of content to use. And we know from experience that having UGC on product pages really does increase conversion, and also having UGC in galleries that's always bringing in new content is a way of inspiration for your customers. So I'm going to pass back over to Alison now. This is the last case study that we wanted to share with you, but hopefully that's inspired you on ways that you guys can collect and use your UGC as well, and hopefully showing that it doesn't have to be too complex and it can just be a case of setting up the right collectors and making sure that your moderation guidelines are correct.
Amazing, thank you, Sam. So thank you everyone for listening. Hopefully this has been useful. We do now have time for some questions. So as we explained at the beginning of the session, you can send them through the Q&A chats, which should be at the top or at the bottom, actually, sorry, of your screen. It seems like we already have a couple, actually. So yeah, okay, I'm going to take the first one.
You take the first one, I'll take the second one.
Okay, cool. So the first question is, how can we make sure that the pictures we get through are good enough to use? All right, so firstly, I guess you can educate your community, right? So ensuring that they understand what your UGC strategy is about, and yeah, kind of understand what type of content you're looking for. So first of all, this can be simply started by, adding a call to action, for example, on your Instagram bio, sharing about your strategy, promoting it on your social post, and also in your Insta stories. We've seen that lately Instagram stories have been really, really powerful. And by doing so and sharing the call to action there, it can bring a lot of really great content. Then if you work with influencers, leverage them. Use them to educate your community, to guide the quality, and really to inspire your users and your community. Make sure also that they mention the brand, your brand handle, and use the appropriate hashtags that you may have for specific campaign or or product launches so that your customers follow the lead and do the same. And then finally, I guess you could also think about running contests and campaigns. So like the one we mentioned earlier with the simple skincare example, that could be a great way to engage your community and get some good content. So that's kind of like an external contest. And you can also do it internally. We've seen loads of clients that have done it with their own employees. And therefore, that can be really powerful as well. Then from a practical perspective, make sure that you provide all of the information like Sam mentioned. So, provide your account manager with all the information in regards to the campaign, if it's a campaign or your strategy, and provide the brand guidelines for the moderation team so that they actually understand what type of content you're looking for, and then they can make sure that the quality of that content is meeting your your expectations.
Well, so we have 2 more questions. So the second question that we've got is, you can't purchase directly on our site, so we don't see conversion. How would you track success? And I know for a couple of the brands at L'Oreal, this is actually really relevant. So you can track engagement metrics in the content engine as well. So you can see whether your customers are interacting with these UGC. So that's really useful. So you can look at things like total interactions, unique interactions, and average interactions per user. And also remember, for example, asking for rights and featuring a customer's content on your site, you're creating a relationship with this customer. So if you actually check as well their comments back to you, you'll notice that they all really like being involved in this. So that's kind of a way of making sure that these consumers keep sharing with you, and they also feel like part of the community. So like I mentioned before as well, in a couple of the case studies, you can track ambassadors in the content engine as well. And you can actually do this by interactions rather than revenue. So you can just make a change so that you can see this. So you can see as well which ambassadors are actually creating the content that your customers engage with the most. And again, your account manager can help you find these metrics and help you with how to use them. Cool. So we've had another question. So what are the best practices for editorial content, and do you have any case studies for editorial sites too? So we might need a little bit more information on this, so definitely reach out after. But what I would say with UGC is that, this is unique content created by your customers. It's not a way of, it's not like advertising content. They're sharing content with you about brands that they like. It's on their social profiles. So most of it is very natural, very kind of lifestyle based. So I would definitely advise you to use this content in editorial places, like on the blog, like in, if you're writing stories or you're giving information on the site. A lot of clients do this, and it's a really good idea. If you're worried about it looking too much like brand content, you can obviously be quite relaxed with the moderation guidelines, and maybe think about things like including people in the pictures and not just being an image of a product.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe just as another example, some clients actually on their blog share some like best photos each month. So that's something that could maybe potentially as well like be taken into account. And sharing photos that your consumers have shared with you essentially will also increase like engagement metrics, and also kind of give more inspiration in terms of like what type of content you're looking for, what type of content the brand is willing to receive. So yeah, definitely a good way to kind of experiment UGC on blogs and use that as well.
Yeah, and just I think finally to add to that, so UGC is really trusted by customers because they know that it's not being created directly by a brand, it's being created by real people. So if it's obvious on the site as well, using things like adding the username or referring to it as something to do with this is what our customers have been sharing, that's how your customers are going to trust the content that's coming through.
Definitely. Do we have any other questions?
So
I think that's it.
No.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much everyone for listening. We will follow up with a link to the page where we will store all of these webinars going forward. And as we mentioned at the beginning as well, we will send you a survey where, we would love to hear your feedback on this webinar, but also kind of hear your thoughts on what you want to hear about next. So yeah, thank you so much, everyone, and have a lovely afternoon.
Cool. Thank you for your time, everyone.